Hi, I'm Paul Kendall, and I want to talk to you about the balance between work and family. Now, this is a huge issue in society today. I'm sure that we would all agree, if I came around and asked each one of you, we would all agree that our marriages and our families are most important, that they're more important than anything else in the world. But I know that we've all also heard stories of marriages or families that were damaged because the husband or wife or mom or dad spent a disproportionate amount of time at work trying to build their career or their business. You know, I've been doing marriage counseling for a little over 20 years now, and I can tell you with great certainty that no one intends for this to happen. Nobody does it intentionally. As a matter of fact, most of them say something like, if I could only go back, if I could know then what I know now and go back, I would do it all differently. So what we want to do today is we want to take a look at two things. The first is how it happens, and secondly, how to prevent it. So let's start with how it happens. As I mentioned before, nobody intends for this to happen. No one says, I'm going to spend so much time at work that it will damage my marriage, but I'm going to do it anyway. They don't say that. No one does it on purpose, but it still happens. And it's the result of the person's hierarchy of priorities. And you might be thinking, well, I don't have one of those. Well, I would say, actually, you do. You have either an intentional hierarchy of priorities or an unintentional hierarchy of priorities. You either made one up intentionally for yourself or life made one up for you. So, listen, if our priorities are not in order, every decision we make will be subject to challenges. Now that's a big point in this message today. So let me say it again. If our priorities are not in order, every decision we make will be subject to challenges. And I carefully said every decision, even the good ones. Even if you make a good decision, it'll still be subject to challenges because other things in your life are out of order. So I'd like to share with you what I have found to be a proper hierarchy of priorities. And you do well to write them down and memorize them. I'll try and put them up at the end of this video so that you can maybe take a screenshot of them and save them. But they are in this order. I mean, I'm just going to give you my top 6. Number 1 is God. Number 2 is spouse. Number 3 is children. Number 4 is job, and because I work so much in ministry circles, I put job/ministry because ministry can become time-consuming like a job. Number 5 would be extended family, and number 6 would be hobbies and interests. So let me say them again for you. Number 1 is God, 2 is spouse, 3 is children, 4 is job/ministry. Number 5 is extended family, and number 6 is hobbies and interests. Okay, now before I go on, I want to clarify just a couple things about this list. Number 1, it's not a conclusive list by any means. It's just a top 6 at best. Secondly, it's not an absolute list. If you don't like my order, you can change anything from number 4 down. You just can't change the top 3, God, spouse, children. Anything from 4 down, if you want to put them in different order, add to them or whatever the case may be, that's fine. Put them in whatever order you want, but at least have an order. And number 3, this list is part of a marriage program that we do called the Marriage Miracle, and it's usually a group setting of about 6 couples. And when I get to this hierarchy of priorities, just about every time, one of the guys will look all bummed out and say, well, that's great. I'll never be able to go hunting again. It's at the bottom of the list. And that's just not true. That's not true. The truth is, if you have your hierarchy of priorities in order and you stick to them, when it comes time for you to go hunting or go to the races or bowling or fishing or whatever your hobby is, your interest, when that time comes, you'll be able to go guilt-free. And nobody will be upset with you because you've decided to take a couple days and go hunting because everything else has been taken care of. All right, so we're still on the how the trouble starts. The trouble starts when one of these items creeps up higher to a higher position than it should. So let's say, just for the sake of an example, let's say that number 4, your job, becomes a higher priority than your spouse or children. And by the way, in my own life, I don't like to think of my children as a lesser priority than my spouse. So my list is kind of like number 1, God, number 2, spouse/children, because they're equally important to me. Each one is an equal priority to me. But they do have their separate places, you know, and I can remember times when Evie and I would maybe schedule a date for a Friday night, and then one of the kids would want to do something on that Friday night. I would hold to, my priority, and I would say, well, we can do that. We just can't do it this Friday night because I promised Mama a date, and I want to stick to that. And then, of course, we would do, the other on a different night. But so even in my own life, my list is equal on spouse and children. But again, for the sake of the point, let's say that number 4, the job slips up higher than one or both of those priorities, spouse and children. Who in their right mind would put a business or a job as a higher priority than a spouse or family? Answer, no one. No one. You don't have to. Life will do it for you. Years ago when our kids were little, I was working really hard to make ends meet. And I was a part-time minister on staff at a church, which is really no such thing. There's a such thing as part-time pay, full-time staff. But there's no such thing as part-time minister. But anyway, I was a part-time minister on staff at a church. I worked a full-time midnight shift as a master control operator at a television station. And if that wasn't enough, I got involved helping a friend of mine start an IPTV network. That's internet broadcasting. And this was back in the days before YouTube, actually. So this is big technology, and took lots of time to build these media players and everything, to figure all of this out. And that consumed probably a minimum of 20 hours a week of my time alone, let alone the other jobs that I was doing. But listen, in my mind, I pictured myself standing there like a superhero with the wind blowing through my superhero cape, as the dedicated husband and father that would do whatever it takes to provide for my family. I thought it was a noble thing. I thought it was a heroic thing that I was working so hard, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll work around the clock if I have to. Excuse me, that was a 7-year season in my life. And for 4 of those 7 years, I was sleep deprived. I barely got any sleep. It was really something how hard I was working to take care of my wife and kids. And I thought it was a noble thing. And there was just one really big problem with it. I was becoming an absentee father and an absentee husband. This is what I mean when I say that nobody does this on purpose. I certainly wouldn't have done that on purpose. If you know much about me, you know that my whole life and ministry, my whole vocation has been centered around family. Family is a big deal to me. It's such a high value. And here I'm the guy that's all about family, and somehow I'm neglecting my family. Nobody does this on purpose. I certainly didn't. So even if it feels justified, it's still going to cause problems. So this is something that I want you to never forget. Listen to this. No matter what your justification is for your disordered priorities, it does not negate the damage. And I want to say that again because that's a big deal in this topic. No matter what your justification is for your disordered priorities, it does not negate the damage. I hear it all the time, but you don't understand. This work I'm doing, it's got to be done. These people need me, or I need the money, or whatever the justification is. Listen, my justification most of the time was something to do with ministry, God's work. I mean, how can you get any more, important top priority than that? I'm doing God's work here, That's pretty good justification for staying busy, I would think. But I'm telling you, no matter how justified, no matter how noble, no matter how wonderful and lofty your reason is that your priorities are out of order, it will not negate the damage that's done. In all of my ministry work, even that IPTV network project that I was working on, that was to spread the gospel, on the internet. I felt like I was doing a wonderful thing. And no matter how justified your reasoning is, there still will be collateral damage. You cannot defy that. That network project involved phone calls with my partner, Devin, a good friend of mine to this day. He lived in Maryland, and we were on the phone for hours and hours every week. I'll never forget, it was the first time that I had bought a Bluetooth earpiece for my cell phone because I got so tired of holding the phone up, to my head. And the heat from the phone, so I got one of those Bluetooth earpieces, and we would talk for hours. My kids got to the point where they would literally sigh when my cell phone rang. If we were at the dinner table, I'd get a phone call. Devin might have been, somebody else, but it was so important that I would get up from the table and I'd walk into another room and I'd spend the rest of the dinner time talking on the phone in the other room. Or we'd be on a family outing, and the phone would ring, and I would take it. I can remember one trip. We lived in Fort Pierce, Florida at the time. We were on a family trip down to Fort Lauderdale. It was about a 3-hour trip from what I remember. I talked on the phone the entire trip, all the way to Fort Lauderdale. And then if there were times where we were out for a family outing, maybe we were at, Chuck E. Cheese or something with the kids, there would be the kids playing, mom would be with them, and where's dad? Oh, he's over in, the quietest corner he could find because a phone call came in and he took it and he's over there talking on the phone the whole time while we're here playing. It's supposed to be a family night. Daddy's on the phone. Now here's something you've got to see. Again, in my mind, I'm my family's superhero. I'm thinking my wife and kids are more important to me than anything else in this world. That really was my mindset. I felt like I was doing a good thing. But listen, in my wife and kids' mind, their thinking was something along the lines of, Daddy doesn't really care about us, at least not as much as his business. Now, how in the world did that happen? Well, the answer is my priorities had slowly slipped completely out of order. And when all this came crashing down, I was in a real quandary because I didn't know what to do. It's like, if I fix this over here, then it messes that up over there. And if I fix that over there, it messes this up over here. So what do I do? Okay, so we've covered how it happens. Let's move on to how to prevent it. And you're probably already ahead of me because the answer is a proper hierarchy of priorities. So needless to say, God should be your highest priority, and He should come before everything. And that's not a religious statement, by the way. If you think about it, He created you. He knows what's best for you. James 1:5 says, if you need wisdom, all you have to do is ask Him for it, and He will give it to you liberally. So who would not want to connect with God on a regular basis and get the wisdom that they need for their life? So don't let anything, not even your spouse, distract you from your relationship with God. That's kind of a no-brainer. And by the way, it's a no-brainer, everybody would agree, but it's not so easy to do. You have to be very intentional about that relationship. Next is your spouse and children. And listen, in this day and age, you've got to intentionally schedule time with your spouse and with your children. Years ago, Evie and I started a shared calendar. It's just a Google Calendar. So when I put something on it, it shows up on hers in a different color. And when she puts something on hers, it shows up on mine in a different color. And then when we invite each other to something, we're saying, not only am I doing this, you need to be at it too. Then it splits down the middle and shows both colors, and the other one accepts it. And then we know that the other one has accepted it. And it really keeps things straight for us. And we actually schedule our date nights together. Or maybe just an evening at home, maybe on a Friday night. She will say, I'd really love it if we could just stay home and do nothing for once, just nothing. And she'll put it on the calendar and invite me, and I agree to it. We schedule time with our family. Listen, our kids are grown now. They're both married. My daughter's married, and her and her husband work, and they have 2 children, and my son's married, and he and his wife both have careers. It's busy enough with just Evie and I, let alone all 6 of us trying to get together with all of these crazy schedules. Excuse me. So it's a real challenge sometimes to get us all together, but we have to schedule it, and we do schedule it. So I would really encourage you to have a shared calendar between you and your spouse, or you and your children, whoever you would like to use that with, to make sure that these times come together and you actually spend time together. Listen, when you are 99 years old and laying on your deathbed, the people standing around you will not be your former business associates and clients. It will be your family that is there with you to the very end. I think back on that 7-year season of my life, 4 of which I was sleep deprived. I mean, it was horrible. And I think of all of the people that I was working so hard for, to meet deadlines and do a good job for, and really impress, because I want another project from them. I think of all those people, and with rare exception, I would say that the great majority of those people don't even remember my name. Now, did I need the money? Yeah, I needed the money. But I was going about it the wrong way, which is a whole nother series on how I climbed out of that pit financially. But again, it was a noble cause. Had to have the money, had to pay the mortgage payment, the car payment, the lights, the water. But it didn't make any difference. It was messing up my family. But none of those people are in my life anymore. I worked so hard to impress them and to please them. And they're not even in my life anymore. And I'm not 99 yet. In Mark chapter 8:36, Jesus says, "What shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" Well, to adapt it to our topic today, I think it's safe to say, what shall it profit a man if he shall gain a successful business and career and lose his own family? Listen, when you're with your spouse, be with your spouse and your spouse alone. When you're at home with your kids, be with your kids and your kids alone. Shut off your phone. Don't take calls. Don't respond to texts and emails. Listen, when we're sitting there with clients, maybe for an hour to sell something or to explain something or whatever, we dare not look at our cell phones. Oh no, we don't pull them out and check them every time we get a text or a call. No, we put it on vibrate or airplane mode and we don't take them because this is business, this is important. Well, how much more important is your family? And I'm telling you what, I'm kind of expounding on this particular point because I've heard this one more than anything. Wives coming in saying, when he gets home, he will not get off that phone. He's on it constantly. He's either taking calls or he's texting somebody back. It's like that's all so important. It's like, we don't even exist. So turn it off. Just turn it off. You can do it in business, at work. Do it at home. The world is not going to fall apart. It's okay. And here, somebody came up with this silence mode where it just vibrates, and now we're to the point where everybody knows what that sound means. Bzz, 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 bzz. Oh, you want to get that? I hear it going off in your pocket there. So you may have to put it in airplane mode or just shut it off completely. But when you're with your wife, be with your wife alone. When you're with your kids, be with your kids alone. Make sure that they know by your actions, not just your words, because we all know that actions speak louder than words. Make sure that they know by your actions that they mean more to you than anything else in the world. And if you do that well, if you keep that hierarchy of priorities in order and you stick to it, then they will never resent your time at work. They will never resent your time on a hunting trip, or you ladies at the mall for the evening, or whatever it is you do as a hobby or your own personal interest. They won't resent that because you have already met their need. You have already shown them that they are more important than anything else. So going back to my own quandary of what to do when everything came crashing down, I realized what was happening to my family. I remember calling my partner, Devin, in Maryland, and saying, I've got a problem and I really need your help with it. And he's a wonderful guy, but I really stressed over that call. I thought he's going to be disappointed. We're not going to be able to do this anymore. It's not going to work anymore. And guess what? I was totally wrong. Totally wrong. I talked to him and he said, listen, I would never want to create that problem in your marriage or your family. Never. And by the way, that was the case with me. I cannot tell you over the years how many people I have encouraged to go in and talk to their boss or their coworker or their business partner about an issue like this where it's interfering with home, that their partner or boss or whoever it was did not respond the same way. I cannot remember one that said, well, I'm sorry, if you're going to work here or be my partner, you got to take these calls at all hours of the day. I've never heard that before. Every single one of them has said, oh my goodness, no. You don't take my call. If you're in the middle of something with your family, you don't take my call. And that was the case with Devin. We came up with new boundaries that if either one of us was with our wife or kids, or even in our own personal Bible study time, our alone time, and the other one called, that we would let it go to voicemail. And the other one would leave a message, give the gist of the call and say, when you're freed up, whenever that is, give me a call back. And that became a new standard for us. And guess what? Nothing got left undone. The world did not fall apart when we put those new boundaries in place. And listen, I will never forget the night that my son Alex and I were out for a father-son night, which, by the way, we still schedule once a month to this day. He's 29 years old. I still schedule a daddy-daughter lunch date with my daughter, who's 31, every month. And I don't want to exaggerate and say that we make every single one of them, but we make most of them. And it's that intentional scheduling. All right, but anyway, he was about 12 years old. We were out on a father-son night, and we were riding along in the car when my cell phone rang. And there it laid in the console, and biggest day on the caller ID, it said, Devin, my business partner. And Alex looked at the phone, and he looked up at me as if to say, what's he going to do? And I reached down, and I silenced it. And I didn't take the call. And listen, I will never forget the huge smile on my son's face that clearly said, I'm more important. You have a hierarchy of priorities. You have one. I would encourage you to create an intentional one that's in proper order. So you've got one. But the question I want to leave you with today is, who's in control of them? God bless you.